You guys know the rules. This is the last in the session. Today we're talking about Mission Blue. I think it's been working pretty well with everybody kind of raising their hands if you have a question. Just let me know, stay on mute. And then if you have a question, you can kind of come off mute and jump into the conversation or raise your hand and I'll make sure that you get called on. And if you have any questions, just, feel free to get me in the chat. If for some reason you're trying to get in and haven't been able to get in, just send me a quick note in the chat and we'll make sure to get everybody's comments in there. I'm going to turn it over to Ken. I'm going to put the discussion guide into the chat and then we should be off and running.
Okay. So Mission Blue, I think I said this in the other two films, but I tried to choose films that had a strong personal connection with nature or the environment. The second film had several people. This one really does focus on a single person, as did the first Octopus film. So this is about Sylvia Earle. And I think, Jill, that you had sent out the link if somebody wanted to actually watch that webinar that's coming up later on this week. If you're really into this, just happened to be an interesting piece of synchronicity there because it's a webinar with Sylvia Earle and Foster, who did the Octopus film. So somebody must have known we were doing the two of them and decided there should be a webinar with both of them on there. I'm going to watch it even though we're done, just out of curiosity to see what the connection is. Obviously, both of them are people who are interested in promoting environmental causes, and both of them have nonprofits that they work with. Different though, because Foster was a filmmaker and Sylvia Earle was a scientist who spent most of her life as a scientist and came to the environmental ideas kind of later in her career. She was really an academic, and then she moved on to see that things that she had been studying for years and years were disappearing. And the last part of her career and her current part of her career is based on environmental causes. Let's see what else we have here to talk about. I also tried to choose films that I thought had some optimism and hope in them, because this can be a really depressing topic, environmental issues. These are not the pretty, look at the beautiful nature kinds of films. These are ones that are showing you some of the issues and problems that we have. She says, if we wait another 50 years, opportunities that we have now will be gone, but that there are things that we can do now that will allow us to not eliminate the problem, but help alleviate some of the problems that we're having. I also kind of asked the question on the first side, which is not part of the usual, but it says the film was released in 2014. How have the problems she shows us improved or progressed since then? Actually, I'm curious to see if in the webinar she talks about that, like what's been done. I think I mentioned the film I Am Greta earlier, which is not available on Netflix. I believe it's on Hulu, about the young activist. And even though I really like that film, it has a kind of depressing ending, not a spoiler, but she's disappointed in the fact that with all of her work and all the attention that she's gotten, she hasn't seen a lot happen. Things seem to be the same. Nothing's getting better. There's also a TED Talk that I linked to with Sylvia Earle that I think is really interesting. Those TED Talks have had a lot of reach out in the world for the videos. Okay, so let's look at some of the discussion questions. So the first one I called Information, Entertainment, and Infotainment. The danger of any documentary that has a goal to be informative and scientific is that the film can end up feeling like something for a classroom or even propaganda. Some entertainment value is generally added to add a spoonful of sugar and broaden the audience. Do the filmmakers balance these aspects properly? Of the three films, which is the most entertaining, which is the most informative, and do any of them touch into the field of propaganda a bit too much? So any of those three ideas. I'll take a sip while you're contemplating. Let me go to gallery view here so I can see more of you. I see Sharon's iPhone is lighting up. Might just be some noise though.
Can you hear me?
I see Paula.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think my octopus teacher was the most entertaining, thought-provoking, and I'm sorry I never learned, even though I know I could do it now, how to scuba dive. That's with Mission Blue too. In fact, to sidetrack a little bit, after we had the discussion on, I forgot the title, about the coral.
Chasing Coral, yeah.
Chasing Coral. I rewatched it for the third time because I couldn't really answer your questions. And
Wow.
I ended up in tears, how sad it was. There was hope. I was actually crying. That's how much it just meant to me. And then this one, Mission Blue, just blew me away. And it's just so sad. Hopefully I'm hoping that there is hope and that we can do something. I mean, they did show that the Great Barrier Reef, it's not all dead, only 29%, but it's very interesting. But I did find the most entertaining was my octopus teacher.
Yeah, I think that's if you were going to recommend one of the three to somebody who doesn't necessarily watch environmental films or even documentary films, it would probably be my octopus teacher.
That's what
but you could also say, okay, but maybe that one was the least informative. It didn't really hit hard on that because I don't think that was its goal. Was not to do that. It was.
I think that they, as some people said, they won't be able to eat octopus again. I mean, you don't think that these creatures, invertebrates, all these sea creatures can think, but they can in some way. So this is their life. They have a routine and they're supposed to keep the world in a nice, even keel. And unfortunately, we have a brain and we're not doing that. We're looking at many ways, try to improve, but a lot of times trying to destroy too. Because we're trying to get off the world. Let's go to Mars. Let's go to another planet because they don't see this world as surviving.
Well,
big in science fiction too.
Yeah, underwater in the oceans to me is like another world. Mostly still unexplored, quite alien to us. Not a place we can live. Just like Mars, we can't live there unless there are, bathyspheres that we live in or something like that.
Let's put a big bubble, an underwater bubble. You can live there.
Yeah, but
it's been proven in science fiction books. They can do it. So,
well, there are ones that they submerge, bathyspheres that go down and everything. But it's like going to Mars. You're not just going to walk around and build a little shack and live there, kind of thing. So it's an alien environment. And I think I said for the octopus thing. I mean, there are creatures under the sea that certainly look like aliens to me. If I was designing an alien film, I would look at things from underwater for my models to build them, kind of thing. So anyone else on the topic of balancing information, entertainment, and staying away from propaganda?
Sharon, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. My octopus teacher is something I kept recommending to people I knew who kind of like nature, but didn't really watch a lot of documentaries. So I figured that would entertain them. But this Mission Blue, that one covered so many different issues as far as being a woman, as far as the glass ceiling, as far as nature, as far as, us destroying our world that we live in. So to me, that was my favorite because it gave you everything.
Well, Jill and I think about programming when we're setting these up, and there's, I said we're going to send you a list of the other films that were under consideration in case you really want to look at some of the other ones. But I thought these were the best. But I said to Jill, I think my octopus teacher will be the most popular one. Should we put it first so that we grab people's attention, or should we save it for last so that they hang in there? And we decided to go with first. My fear was that, people would watch it and then they watch the second one and say, I don't know, it wasn't as entertaining as that first one, kind of thing. But, programming and setting them up in a balance is a little bit tricky. So anyone else on that topic?
Yeah, this is Patty. And I would encourage you to hold on to Chasing Coral and, definitely have that second, if not first. I sent it to a whole bunch of divers and they were shocked. Now they have dived, in Australia and a lot of the places where diving is encouraged, and they were shocked because it's been several years since they've been out and they had no idea that this was going on. So I, for one, even though that was the most painful one, to me, thought it was the best one for really educating us. And the first one was certainly more entertaining, if you will, even though he was going through his own difficulty. It was more beautiful, but it wasn't talking yet about the problems. Where the second and the third one really, it's like I want every elementary school to show these movies after school if they have to, if they can't fit it into the curriculum. But I do think our young generation, I'm hoping that a lot of them pick careers where they end up having an impact on these problems. Thanks. But Chasing Coral was my favorite, even though it was the most painful.
Oh, good. Well, that's the other thing about favorite films and things like that. Yeah, somebody told me in a film course many years ago, they said, just know that your least favorite film is someone's favorite film. Just like your favorite film is someone's least favorite film. Like if you say, worst movie I've ever seen, there is someone who said, I love that movie. I love that movie. It's just, you cannot really predict. And we try to do a balance of things here. I think I wrote for the description on the Octopus Teacher that it's really not like other nature films. And it's really not. And it doesn't intend to do the same things. So, that term infotainment has come up. And, you don't want your film to be a documentary in the school version. For Montclair Film, we do a thing called Junior Jury, where we have kids at the festival who are high school students interested in film in some way, and they judge documentary films. And more than once, when I met with the group the first time, I would say, well, what do you think of as a documentary? And they said, the things they show you in science class. And I said, well, yeah, those are documentaries too. Channel 13, that stuff on Channel 13. Well, yeah, some of those are documentaries too, but they don't really know how creative documentaries can be. They think of them as sort of dull, pumping information at you kind of films. And I think, it changes them to see documentaries that are different than that. So I think it's a good experience. Okay, second question. Comparing this to our two other films. Some people have already talked about it.
Wait, sorry, hold on one quick. I think Carolyn had something quick to say.
Oh, where's Carolyn?
I just, the movie this time, the character got in the way of me enjoy. Well, it's not what I would call enjoyable. It was certainly educational, but she got in the way as compared to the octopus. I love that guy. I just thought that was, I really enjoyed the person, and the person got in the way of the last one for me.
What do you mean got in the way? What does that mean?
I just thought
it is a film about her.
I thought she was so full of herself that I found it offensive.
Oh, okay. It is
she's
basically
the brightest
a film about
person
her.
that ever dove under the water. I didn't like her.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wow.
I'm not sure if I had a question about something related to that later, but maybe we'll see when we get to it. So comparing to the other films, while she's been observing the ocean for decades, like Chasing Coral, she's seen firsthand healthy reefs vanish. Her life experiences are kind of a time lapse too. As in My Octopus Teacher, her personal life is part of the film. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, Carolyn. The filmmakers don't gloss over that her professional ambitions led directly to personal problems. Her passion for oceanographic exploration came at a price. She spent large blocks of time away from her children, had 3 marriages that ended in divorce. Does she seem to have regret for her life choices? Are there any other comparisons or contrasts? So Carolyn, do you think that plays a part in your opinion of Sylvia? The fact that
I think it probably
personal life-
does, but I really didn't. I just thought that she was so full of herself. I don't know. She just struck me like I am the smartest person that ever dove.
No.
That she's got more schooling than anybody else. That's the way she came across to me.
Okay. I bet this is going to cause other opinions to come up. So I see Richard and Beth, and I see maybe Marilyn on deck, and Gladys. A lot of people. Okay. How about Richard?
Okay, now am I unmuted?
Yep. No, you're going.
Oh, okay, but we're gone. I kind of agree with Carolyn, but the one piece that disturbed me, I don't know how impressed she was with herself, but in her early years, right out of college, she had one set of values, and then she moved as she became more educated, etc. My issue is her selfishness about her career over her children, more than even having 3 husbands. Today, I guess anything's possible, but to have those 2 children and then the 3rd child, and it's a responsibility when you have children towards those children, and she didn't accept that responsibility. We saw her pushing one of them on a swing or a slide, which was so flamboyant, which is part of maybe that's how she judged that her families didn't matter to her. And that was so offensive. When you make a commitment to have children, you've made a life commitment. Life changes, and oh well. We don't know what happened to those children in any way. And that disturbed me, but I thought the film was wonderful. Just that one issue bothered me a lot. And
but she did address the children. The daughter came on and said, we lived a life where we lived around the world. We learned from my mom. And I think it's a question of a generation gap type of ideal, where we question what women, we don't question men when they go off and follow their dreams and they balance work and they balance a man can have a wife, but everybody needs a wife. A man could go off and work, he could go off and explore, but he'd come back because he still had a wife to take care of the household. She didn't have a wife. She had herself. Right, and she said, I had to do everything. I had to dress up for a cocktail party. I had to do this. I mean, I don't think she dumped her responsibility of her children. That should be a shared responsibility. And we don't know what relationship she had with the exes, or maybe she had a mom or a nanny or somebody who did take care of the kids. Like, we're judging her and we're saying she's full of herself. But when we say a woman is assertive and we have confidence, then we're showing off, or we're bragging, or we're conceited. But I just have to disagree with that. I think she was just very confident after a while, and she was smart, and she was smarter than the men, and there was nothing wrong with that.
Sharon, I'm going to ask you a question directly before we go to the next person. One of the things I asked in there was, do you think she has regrets about her life choices?
I don't think I think we all have regrets about some of the things.
Well, from what we know in the film,
from looking, I think she might have had some regret, but I think she had to live her dream, and she knew she had to live her dream. She would never have been happy if she didn't. So she might have had some regret, but I don't think she should have stopped her dream.
Okay. Marilyn, I see you've been waving your hand.
Yes, I somewhat agree with Sharon. She was I think she had a regret that she didn't start sooner and in bringing this all to light, so that hopefully we would have started to do something about all the problems, earlier on. I think what happened when she left academia, she realized that she was on a mission, and she pursued that mission. And I don't know. I didn't get the feeling that she was full of herself. She was on a mission to bring this information out, to people so that we can stop the damage that we've done. I mean, the damage in 60 years is incredible. When she talked about the Gulf of Mexico and the oil drilling and everything else, it's just, really scary. And if we don't do something really soon, we're toast. So that's it.
Who else? I think
we have Gladys
before.
and then Donna. Oh, you got to unmute, Gladys. Sorry, I think I muted you.
I think there's still a lot of bias and prejudice against women, being in the science world or in any type of profession even. And I saw all those headlines in the video. One woman within 70, everything's going to be okay. It'd be 70 men. Like you don't see any of that directed to men. And even myself, as I was watching it, I was like, what? She left her children? What is she doing? So we all have this bias, especially women of my generation, against women who marry more than once and who abandon their children to pursue, their own life. And I think that's so unfair. Men do not have that. And like Sharon said, everybody needs a wife. And men have it so good. Even today, women are balancing in this COVID age. They have to stay home. They have to be teachers for their little kids. And they still have to do the laundry and get on their computer and do their job. So I think what we're all saying here, most of us, is comes from ingrained prejudices against what women's role has to be in this society. That's all I have to say.
Before we go to the next person, the next question actually is about women. We've been talking about it all along. And one factor in my choice of this film was that it focused on a woman, because the other two films pretty much focused on men. Clearly, it was a challenge for her to gain acceptance in a field that in the 1960s, when she starts, was dominated by men. She's often the lone female on an expedition. Is that aspect of the film underplayed, and should it have been more of a focus? Obviously, if it wasn't played up as much as it should have been, it still had an impact on our audience here, because a lot of you are talking about it. So what do you think of that particular aspect of the film? Because again, it's a film about her. It's a film about Sylvia, clearly. It's like a bio film, but it also has an environmental message. So as with when we talked about the octopus film, we talked about there's so many things we don't know about his life. Like, what about his wife, and what happened in his life and everything? And they say that's not important. We're putting that aside. And they put some of it aside here, but I mean, some of it is present. Should it have been more of a factor? Whoever said that, this should be shown in classrooms, I could imagine a good discussion in a classroom with the girls in the class. And would you consider becoming a marine biologist or doing that thing? I mean, when I was in school, I don't think girls would have considered it because of the fact that it just was not something they did. It wasn't open. There probably were nobody majoring in it at that point or something like that. So
I think it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake to put into this video. When was this done? 2004?
2014.
2014. It was a mistake, I think, to put in there all those interviews and whatnot of her, highlighting the fact that, she was a woman, and not highlighting the fact that she was a scientist. And that was the most important aspect of her as a person, I think. I mean, they had this group of 5 women, they called them mermaids, and, they're living with a rug and whatever it was that they were living in, and they had their own kitchen. I don't think if it had been a group of men, it wouldn't have been a group of men, because men, have been scientists forever. And she was the first one in this particular expedition that they had. So I think it was a mistake to highlight the fact that she was not that she was the only woman, but that the fact that she was a woman was such a I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that whole aspect of the video. Because I find myself judging her. And then I said, what are you doing? Don't judge her. This is what her passion is. A man would not be judged by any of us. So I don't know that they did the film a favor by putting in all those old videos of her where it was a sensation still for her to be in that field, whereas later she was then accepted more as a woman scientist. So that gave it a different slant, I think. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep, I do. I see Richard with a real hand, and I
Well,
see
we're gonna-
Anthony has a virtual hand too.
Yeah, let's do Anthony and then Richard.
You have to unmute or hold down your space bar. Still can't hear you, Anthony.
If you just hold down your space bar, then
If
I
you're on
think
a
we had you
computer.
for a second.
Yeah. As long as you're holding it down, it'll be unmuted, but, or it will mute. Well, why don't we switch over to Richard?
Okay.
And if Anthony can get his unmuted in between, we'll pick him up. Richard?
Okay, go ahead, Richard.
So far as, women's roles go, the thing that I thought it was very effective because it highlights that, despite the fact that she was a pioneer, so to speak, the world has changed. I went to engineering school at Cornell, and when I was there were 3,500 students in engineering and one woman, literally. And today, from what I see, it's over 40% women. So, the world has changed, is changing. And I think this is a document that shows, what women have overcome in the last 50, 60 years. And that, no field really is that close to them anymore. So I thought it was, germane and interesting to see.
Yeah, Richard, I taught NJIT, which, and I was there starting in 2000, so it's late. And the number of women professors was minimal, but growing. And there were certain majors that there were no women in those majors. So it was still a big deal in 2000 to have a good percentage of students in a major be women. So, I mean, I can just imagine what it would have been in the 1960s, would have been what you were describing, non-existent to see them in those majors. So I think it was a good inclusion in the film because I think it's still an issue. And to look at somebody who came up through that whole process, I think it's an important story to tell. Anthony, did you figure out how to get your mute off there? Nope, still can't hear him.
Anthony, if you want to type your question in the chat, I can read it out loud. If you want to type the question in the chat to me.
Anthony, just yes or no, are you on a computer? Or are you on, just nod your head.
All right, let's go to Tom. Tom.
I understand what everyone's saying about her having a responsibility to her children, but she feels that she has a much higher responsibility to the planet. I mean, she is acting on the behalf of her children and of our children and of everyone's children. She spoke about how if you see a child falling from a window, you don't have the option of just sitting back, that you have to step forward and try to save that child. What she's trying to do is save the planet. It would be different if she was following her passion to be a filmmaker, an artist, and was then walking away from her children. But she's A, not abandoning her children, and B, she's taking this time to try to make sure there's a livable planet for them and such. So, I mean, maybe her influence will be the thing. People like her will influence others, and maybe it'll be the thing that actually saves this planet in the long run. So she's working on the behalf of not just her own children, but everyone's children.
I think I can hear Anthony now. Maybe. His mute seems to be off. Talk to us, Anthony. Are you there?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yes, you are. You're
I am
unmuted.
there.
Yay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've listened to everybody make a comment, and I don't know. I take it from a personal experience. I have a wife who was we're both retired, but at this point, but I had a wife who was very career oriented when she was working. We raised one daughter, and my wife, she honestly, she's not here, so maybe I at the moment, but so maybe I could, she did everything. She really, really did, and she still does. Donna's the kind of a girl who, my daughter and me, we tease her sometimes that sometimes I feel she doesn't trust anybody except herself to do a lot of things. So she's very knowledgeable with a lot of things. She's talented. She's just a bunch of stuff. So maybe this woman, what was her name again? I'm sorry.
Sylvia.
Yeah. She probably had some of the same qualities probably that my wife has. And, I've always admired him in my wife. I don't really think she abandoned her kids. I think she just wanted to do it, have her kids and do what she wanted to do. She had this passion that, that some people don't have. And so she felt that she had to do this. It was ingrained in her. You could see it from the very beginning when she was a kid. She was on that ground looking at these little bugs. Right from there, she had this innate passion about herself. So I really can't. I can't call her out for that. In fact, I admire it. And
I don't think I have to apologize for Sylvia, but I would think for her entering that field at the time that she entered it, she would have to be rather aggressive, a little bit, right, if not full of herself, very confident in herself in order to be in those situations. So I think maybe that part of her personality, although it may seem less attractive to people, is also what probably helped make her successful.
Yeah, she's still with us, right? And she has.
Yes.
She's
She'll
still
be on the
with us.
webinar this week.
Do you know how old she is?
No, I don't know her age offhand.
Not that it matters, but
not that it matters. Age isn't important, but
right.
But she's still active, but she's active now as an environmental person.
I think she said she was born in 1950.
Okay.
All right. Which makes her a year younger than me, so she's close to 70.
I saw something that said 78.
Actually, she's a year older than me. Excuse me.
She's older than that. She was 78, I think, at the end of the movie.
Oh, okay.
She's in her 80s right now.
She's 85.
Okay.
She's 85. She was born in 1935.
Maybe it was she did something in 1950 that I heard.
Can't be 1935.
I don't know.
Oh, so she's in her 80s. So she's okay. So she's still good. And she just feels she needs to do this, and and that's good. It really is good, because I think at least if I start thinking about her as a person and what she did, as far as her choices, then I'm missing the boat. I can't speak for the rest of you, but I feel like then I'm missing the boat on the important thing. The more important thing to me is her mission.
Yeah,
this is what she wanted to do.
Well, that might be then a good way to sort of flip the argument here and say that if in fact we were so caught up in her story and her as a woman coming through and everything that we missed some of the environmental and informative parts, perhaps that was a bit out of balance, kind of thing.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else on the woman issue, or we'll move on?
Jeannie?
We'll probably come up again.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Just two quick things. At some point, she says that she took her children with her whenever she could on all those trips that she made. So, which is pretty remarkable that she was able to do that. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I felt that the history, I guess the history is important. Her personal history is important because it sort of places her in time. And even though it was painful to watch that treatment of women and everything that everybody else has already said, it was what it was. I personally felt that it was too much time was spent on that, but I definitely think that not because of her. I think that was the director's choice, and I feel like the bigger message and the mission and the mission blue and all that stuff came. I kept waiting for it, and it seemed to come too late for me in the film. I would have liked to have seen it a little bit earlier, but I don't think that she wanted to be talking about herself. I think that was director's choice, totally.
Yeah, I think it was too. And if you look up this film, like the keywords that come up if you do a search are biographical film. It is a biography of Sylvia Earle and her involvement in the environment and underwater and things like that. So it is intended to at least partially be a biographical film where, the octopus film, it's not really a biographical film about him, although there's information about him. There's information about the people in the Chasing Coral, but it's not about them. That's not the main thing. I think in this film, her life story is considered to be an important part of the film. So director's choice. Okay. Anyone else I'm missing, Jill? No? Okay. Question 4 about guilt. I'm going to flip back to the question about question 2, and did she feel regrets? This is another question asking you to sort of go into Sylvia's mind kind of thing. Do you feel that Sylvia feels some guilt over not being more of a protector of the oceans earlier in her career? And the reason I bring that up is because guilt is often used in environmental arguments. And the common one, and I heard somebody sort of touch on it here, is you say, what will you tell your children and grandchildren that you did to protect the earth? And in some ways, that's considered a way to get a kind of a call to action. That is, you get people to think about, if not for you, what about other generations? What about your children and your children's children? I mean, don't you feel you need to do something, about that? So did anyone have a sense that she was guilty about the first part of her life and career as an academic? Anyone? Marilyn's nodding her head.
I think she said something in the film that she wished she had, started earlier.
But I don't know if that's guilt or just, it would have been good if I had started earlier. I mean, her academic career was what she really wanted to do, the research and everything. And without all of that, she wouldn't have come to the environmental. But
right. Well, I guess it wasn't guilt because she's still moving forward and doing this. So she's, taking care of business. So, why cry over spilt milk?
Well, the other thing is, we don't know her age for sure here. We're fluctuating on her age. But I don't think she's of an age now where she's going to do a lot of expeditions and underwater diving as much as she did. So do you just give up what you've spent your life doing? Or is there a way to channel it in another direction, which is exactly what I think she's doing. Yeah. She's trying to channel a lifetime of research into environmental action. And you could say, well, she should have done that 50 years ago. Well, maybe she didn't realize it 50 years ago, or maybe she needed to do that research to come to this point now. She became the head of NOAA, first woman to be the chief scientist. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. And that probably led to other women being able to enter the field and inspired women to do that kind of research and work and study. So I think that was a good thing. Anyone else on the idea of guilt or regret?
Yeah, I do.
Jeannie.
It's Jeannie. So she left NOAA because she wasn't able to do what she knew needed to be done. She was being silenced, and so she got out of there. So as far as if she had guilt, certainly not about that. She went to a different place where she could do what needed to be done.
Yeah, that was one of the moments that I thought, I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because if she left NOAA or National Geographic, I got this sense, and this may be totally just me, that maybe she was appointed because they were looking to put a woman in a position so they wouldn't get a lot of flack about not having women in upper positions, and they put her in, but she really didn't have the power to do what she wanted to do. I'm guessing on that, but I thought, that's something I should do a little more research on, because I don't know if we got the full picture there. Anyone else? Guilt and regret.
Yeah.
I hear someone. Someone's starting on their dinner. Okay. I'm going to take that as a no. Okay. Question 5, call to action. All 3 films we watched are not only calls to action, but are connected to organizations that act on and encourage your participation. What do you think the filmmakers want viewers to do after seeing this film? We'll start with that part. What are you supposed to do? What can you do? What did they hope you would do?
Why are you hot, Sheila?
I see Marilyn again. Go.
I would imagine they want us to check out their organizations and find out how, at least on a local level, we can take action.
I mean, that's the general call to action on almost any environmental film, right? Check out the organization, do something locally. I think I mentioned in one of the other films that some of these topics are not ones you can do a whole lot locally. Like, what are we going to do to save the coral? I don't know. And there's no coral around me. What am I going to save? But you can do things for ocean action. I mean, we have a coastline in New Jersey. There's a lot of ocean action groups and things like that, ocean cleanups and things. So, plastics and all. So there's things you can do, but you may not feel that you're directly helping that particular cause. I think they definitely want you to check out their organization. I believe Mission Blue, it's true. I know it's true for the Chasing Coral group that the organization came as a result of the film. It wasn't like we'll make a film to promote our organization. It was, we made this film and you know what, we should have some kind of follow-up that people can join or get more information or bring it to their schools or things like that. This one didn't push as hard on education as I thought it might, being that she was an academic, about, school groups or young people. I thought that was going to be a bigger part of this film, only because of her background, that I thought it would be part of it. But I looked at the Mission Blue website and there are things about education on there. So anyone else on call to action? Did anybody look at the website? Did anybody go to the website? Did it motivate you to look at it? I would think as a filmmaker, or Sylvia or Foster or any of those people, if they asked an audience, so how many of you looked up our organization or have tried to explore what you could do in your area? If the answer was no, they would say, well, then the film failed. It failed because that was the point of the film. It wasn't there to entertain you. It wasn't there to show you pretty pictures of the ocean. It was there to motivate you to do something. And if you didn't do something, in a way, we have failed, which is a tough thing to say. I also added on that question, Earl first experienced the ocean at age 12 when she moved with her family to a place near the Gulf of Mexico. My sense is that this early in-life exposure is also part of what Earl would see as part of the way to save the ocean. And that's the education part, which I didn't think they pushed as hard as I thought they would push. Maybe that wasn't their goal. But, and some more than one person has mentioned today that, this should be shown in schools or should expose kids to it. Have your grandchildren watch it, have your children watch it, that sort of thing. I think she would say that's important, but I don't think the film directly pushed at that particular idea. Anyone else on calls to action?
This is Patty. To tell you the truth, as I was watching it, I was hoping John Kerry had this as part of his responsibility as on climate change, and that Biden, that they have all viewed this, and they, and that everybody starts to recognize that there's more below the water's surface than there is above in space that we need to be working on ASAP. And I get back to making the film more available, given that people, even myself, go, oh, we're watching documentaries, and giving that students would, oh, documentaries. It needs to be promoted and shown in as many areas as it can be shown in schools and universities and colleges and among politicians and stuff like that. I'm blown away. I really appreciate Montclair Film having put these three movies up, even though at the beginning I groaned. But I'm really so appreciative, and it makes me wish that the whole world was watching it. And I do particularly. I mean, obviously we can donate a lot to some of the charities, and we can do some work locally or whatever. But I do also hope that John Kerry has it as part of his responsibility for climate change work. Thanks.
Well, I looked at this, and what I see is that we're just so overwhelmed with things that, you know, we would all like to do something about, but you just can't. I mean, in the pandemic, with all the people suffering and the food banks and, you know, people out of work, and they'll show you, there was just an op-ed piece in the Times this weekend on how Costco raises its chickens. I mean, it's never ending. It's just infinite. And you see these things, you say, gee, you know, it would be nice to be able to do something about it. But if I took action on everything that I see, I would do nothing about anything, because I just can't split myself. So I think each of us has priorities, and things that particularly hit home to us are the things we act on. And the thing that a movie like this could do is maybe, you know, motivate somebody for whom this became a priority. But for most of us, we're not going to check it out. And most of us aren't going to donate. And most of us aren't going to get that involved, because there are so many issues that call upon us today and that we're aware of. And it's a problem. On the other hand, at least, you know, it's worthwhile showing and trying to sensitize people to be aware of, and maybe in a small way to do something about.
I think overwhelming is a good adjective, because I was thinking a few weeks ago, when everybody else was going to win the Mega Millions, if I won $300 million, of course, you know, everybody would come calling for donations. And there are a lot of legitimate places I'd like to donate to. And how do you decide, like, is saving the children more important than saving the dolphins? And I mean, it's like, I don't know, there's so many, what can you do? Like when we bought our Prius car, we thought, you know, this is good because, you know, it's going to be sort of helping the environment, till you read about what's involved in making a Prius car and a battery, which is harmful to the environment. And it's like, am I really doing anything? I put my recycling out. How much does that really, you know, do? But it's kind of defeatist, because if you say, well, if you're thinking that, what if everybody else in your town is thinking the same way? And no one puts out the recycle. They all throw it in the trash. You know, one person can make a difference is the whole idea, I think, here. And as Richard said, most of us are not going to do it. And maybe it's not a failure if only 1 in 100 people who watch the film take it further and do something with it, whether it's donate or look for local issues or something like that. Yeah, I mean, documentary is a thing. When, was it Patty that said, she came up as owner's iPad, I think, but documentary is not the thing, kind of thing. And she was glad that we put these 3 forward, because she wouldn't have watched them otherwise. That is very much something Jill and I think about when we're programming the films, is what's something that people would not watch on their own, or it's undiscovered. And I compare it to when, you know, when I taught English, you know, I exposed students to Shakespeare or novels or things that they would never read on their own. And in some cases, after they had, you know, read them, they were blown away by it and wanted to read other things. And they would never have come to this if I hadn't sort of forced them to watch it. Now, we don't force you to watch these, but if you want to participate, you have to watch the film. That's the deal. So I think there is that element to it. So the 6th question is a real filmmaker question.
Hold on, Sarah has something.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, there's Sarah and Michael.
Yeah, well, what I think is great is that the effect of the documentaries was cumulative. We didn't know about bleaching of coral. And then when Sylvia Earle saw the bleached coral, we knew that climate change had affected that. She was talking more about overfishing. And I would think she's a vegetarian from what she said, and I can understand that, but I'm not running out to become a vegetarian just yet. But I like the fact that we learned something in each of them, and however we act upon them, and we all do something in our small way, it can only help.
Yeah. A documentary that I thought was very interesting, not available on Netflix, is a film called Eating Animals, narrated by Natalie Portman, who's a vegan. And it's about the animal industry, you know, processing animals. Someone mentioned, you know, the chickens kind of thing. It's the kind of film that you watch it and you say, I really probably should do something about that. It's pretty horrible, but I'm not going to become a vegan. But her attitude in that film is, what you could do is have Meatless Monday, or you could reduce, or you could help pressure companies to have better conditions for the way they treat the animals. Like, you don't have to go full on vegan or anything like that in order to make a kind of difference. Just being aware of what happens. And I've seen some, you know, pushing vegan and vegetarianism kind of films that they're horrible to watch. I mean, just like these animals being tortured basically and things like that, with hidden cameras going into meat processing plants. And it's like, it kind of turns me off to look at it. It doesn't make me want to help. It makes me think, oh God, I can't watch this. This is horrible. I also like the fact that Natalie Portman says, I'm not a true vegan because I do use honey. And I thought, oh man, they can't even use honey? Holy crow, wow. She feels guilty because she uses honey, wow. All right, so we have an editing question if there's no more about that question. We don't talk a lot about the actual hardcore filmmaking things, but I like to throw in something about the filmmaking aspect of it. So I thought for this one, editing was good. I have a personal dislike for narratives that are not told chronologically, when they hop all over the place. I don't know, it confuses me. I don't like it. This film moves from biography to science to advocacy. And this is obviously a directorial decision. Does this work for you as a viewer, that it moves this way? It's quite chronological and logical in the way that it moves, and it moves through like kind of 3 phases of her life. Is that a good approach for the film to take? Chasing Coral did not do that necessarily. The first film was pretty much narrative structure kind of thing. So how do people feel about the way the film was edited, structured, balancing those 3 parts, cutting back and forth between things? Some people have already mentioned some things like, I didn't want to see those things about her earlier experiences and kind of home movies and things like that. So any ideas about the way the film was put together as a film? I don't see any hands moving at the moment. Maybe I'll have to ask Jill. Put her on the spot there.
Well, I found the narrative, more engrossing and easier to follow, and I preferred it to Chasing Coral, which seemed to me to hop, back and forth, up and down, different people, and it was somewhat repetitious in that, in the beginning they showed you the dying coral, in the middle they showed you the dying coral, at the end they showed you the dying coral with to me, less narrative sense than this movie had or the first movie had. So I prefer this type, but personal opinion.
Well, films of the last 20 years, both fictional and documentary, very much have embraced the idea of non-linear narratives, jumping around, flash forward, flashback, flash forward, flashback, which I just find very distracting, but maybe I'm wrong. Obviously they're popular. So even if you watch, narrative kinds of things, what's the one, The Undoing, that was on television recently with Nicole Kidman and stuff, it jumps all over the place. I mean, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that happening now? Or is that something that happened? I get too easily confused. I like a nice 19th century novel that just goes through this way. But anyway, Anyone else on the structure of the film or the filmmaking aspects of it? This one didn't get into the way Chasing Coral did, how difficult it is to film underwater and do underwater sequences and things like that. Did the underwater sequences impress you the way the first two films seemed to impress people, or was this not one of those films?
Joyce, go ahead. I'm not sure if you had a comment about this question or the one before.
It was the one before. I mean, although I thought that the film showed some beautiful stuff in the ocean, some incredible fishes, but you said something about the undoing, and I got confused when I was watching that because it jumped around. On the other hand, I took a course a number of years ago on Instructing the Instructor, I think it was called, or something like that, where they teach you what it's like to be teaching a class. And one of the things that they said was that if you teach a straight narrative to a class, you'll probably lose them. Like Richard said, maybe the Chasing Coral was more of a straight narrative in its own way, where it went from the dying coral to the dying coral, whereas this one, they jump around from her education, her high education, to her children, to her 3 husbands who were all smarter than God knows what, to Stephen Colbert. I mean, so it kept for me, it kept me interested because it did jump around. So I guess I'd have that comment on the way the film was made.
This film didn't jump around chronologically, though. It stayed pretty much true to the chronology of her life. It jumped from the 3 topics.
Right.
But chronologically, it made sense. Like, it didn't start with her as an older person and then flashback or something like that, which that's the part that I think I find more confusing than it seems like most people find.
And it probably would be more confusing in this kind of a film because we don't know anything about what she knows. So if you were seeing sort of like what happened in 1965 versus what happened in 1985, you might just get confused. I mean, if maybe the smarter you are about this whole topic, maybe you could follow it better. But I'm not smart about this topic.
Well, the last question is also a film question, and it has a little spoiler that I threw in there, which visual language comes up in all of our discussions. And sometimes people have brought up things like editing, or sound and music has come up actually in both of the things. And a lot of times people say, I don't know, was there music in this film? I didn't really notice it. Photography, clearly in these. Narration, whether narration's used. Interviews, that's a method that's in a lot of documentaries. Some people like interviews, some people don't like them. But for this one, because I dig a little into the background of the film, it says I discovered only through reading about the film that those home movie inserts are in fact reenactments. They're not actual home movies, which I find somewhat disingenuous in any documentary when it's not disclosed. It doesn't bother me if it's disclosed, and a lot of times they'll do that. Like crime documentaries are very popular now, true crime ones, and they'll go back and reenact the crime. It's not actually them, but they tell you it's kind of a reenactment. You know that's not an actual guy being murdered or something like that. But in this film, I don't think they made that clear. I think it was, you were supposed to assume that these were actual home movies. Maybe Jenny disagrees with me. Jeannie, not Jenny. Jeannie.
Yeah, actually, in the credits, I actually saw in the credits, they listed the 2 young women who played her when she was young. Yeah. I didn't know why they were there, but I thought that was interesting. So if you read the credits, you would have, something might have popped. If you were focusing on that part of the credits. I just want to say something else that's more of like a global thing. The similarity that I really see between Chasing Coral and this documentary, which I think is such an important thing, even is about whatever they're focusing on, because they were focusing on different things in these 2 documentaries. The biggest problem is food insecurity, which is such a hot topic now because of the pandemic and people being out of work, people not having money and whatever else. But I understand that this documentary was made several years ago, so it almost didn't, like, we watched them like cutting the fins off of those fish and then seeing all those fish being, like just being overfished. And I mean, we got the point of the overdrilling, the overfishing, and the dumping in this one, and the temperature, in the previous one. But food insecurity is a huge issue for people around the world. And I think that's like a link and a hook that could be used to present it. It would, like, I agree with what Sarah said, that even though I was tired of the topic by watching the third documentary a little bit, it is cumulative information that we got, which is good. But to me, that's like a very big call to action that people can really get behind. There's lots of ways to do that. I mean, support your local food bank, or any, I just think there's a larger call to action that maybe it was obvious to other people, but I just wanted to state it.
How do you think this film could have addressed food insecurity?
I feel like it didn't make the point so much. I mean, I saw the different parts of it, and I know that they discussed it. They pointed out the over drilling, the overfishing, and the fact that you need the plant life to support the fish, and the fish support the plant life. But I feel, just for me, unless I missed it, I didn't come out of the film and of the documentary itself and make a call to action. Like, it didn't do it as well as it was done for me in Chase and Carl, where they did use occasionally like some graphics, they had some charts. They seemed to hit the point better for me in the second one about what it meant, in the broader scheme of things. And I think that, I mean, food is a basic necessity, and who can't care about that in some way?
I think what I'm not making is the connection with the food insecurity. Like in the second film, and I think it was in my notes for the film, they talk about how many people rely actually on coral reefs for their food, because that's where the fish come from. In a way, you could be anti-environmental if your cause is food insecurity, because you could say that, these attempts to stop us from fishing and things means that people will not have food available to them. So I'm not sure what this film could have done on that particular topic.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding, but even when they talked about that certain kind of fish that started with an M, I don't remember what the name of it was, but that they were taking too many of that fish out of the water, and they were sort of the cleaner uppers, and that it was going to, I think, and it was going to affect all like the other fish the fish that we fish to eat. We don't eat those fish, but they serve a purpose, and by taking them out, I think it was an oil, maybe. Or maybe that was a different fish.
No, that was used for chicken feed.
Chicken feed. Right. Those
chicken feed.
Right. So, anyway, for me, I just would have liked them to have been more clear, because I think that is the message. I think if we spoil our ocean, then we wind up losing our food. I mean, the temperature gets higher, the water can't sustain life, and so much food comes from the ocean or is tied to that. So, and maybe that's, I'm just taking it that way. And that isn't necessarily an overriding thing, but I certainly think it's part of it.
The really interesting thing is that the fish oil is actually the plant oil.
Yeah, that's my husband's saying that they made the point that the fish oil is really, it comes from the plant. It's not the fish. We don't need to.
Jeannie, you froze on us.
Frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we don't need to kill the fish in order to get the oil. It can come from the
Right.
plants. I think what she was going for there.
That was a good point.
Okay.
All right, we have Donna and then Marilyn.
I was just going to say that on Jeannie's point, though, they did show the big fish market in Japan and how she was kind of disgusted about that there was so much fish there. And then when they asked her, Steve asked her if she, does she eat fish anymore? And she said, no, she doesn't eat fish anymore. So I think that it was there about the food insecurities, but it's kind of, you had to look at the big picture at the end to come up with that conclusion.
Someone else? Jill?
Marilyn had her hand up. Oh, no? Okay.
Well, any other last thoughts before we sign off for this semester? You'll be getting your final exam in the mail soon. In this course in marine biology that you didn't expect you were going to have to take. Marilyn?
want to say thank you for bringing these films, because I don't want, I hardly watch TV. I don't, watch movies usually. So I really appreciate your, bringing these to us. And I look forward to the ones that you're going to bring to us in the future. I learned a lot, and I am going to have my grandchildren watch at least parts of these films if I can get them to sit down and watch a documentary. But they've watched, was it Blue Ocean? They've watched Blue Planet. They've watched stuff like that. So, I want to sit and watch with them because, they're our future. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Real quick before we break, thank you guys all for your participation, all of your amazing comments. I think I don't know, every week I'm amazed by our discussions. I think that there's a lot of knowledge and a lot that we can share. So we are planning to do some more in the spring during the spring mill semester. So hopefully we'll be bringing those to you. We'll see if maybe Michelle had mentioned maybe doing one or two in between the semesters. So we'll try to do that as well. I also wanted to do just a quick plug for if you're looking for some movies to watch on a snowy week. Montclair Film has some great stuff playing on our virtual cinema. So if you go to montclairfilm.org, I think this week until about Thursday, we've got a lot of international movies, if that's something that you're interested in. So a lot of the countries who have submitted their films for the Academy Awards, their submissions for the Best Foreign Film Academy Award. So there's a number of different submissions on there. We also are going to be showing the movie Minari on the 12th. And that is an incredible film. We showed it during our film festival, and it was kind of a limited release. So it sold out during the film festival. But we're able to show it again. And it's an American film, but it is about a Korean family. And so there's a lot of Korean, there's subtitles for the Korean part, and it's a great, wonderful, wonderful movie. I can't recommend it enough. So if you go to montclairfilm.org, you can get signed up on there and watch through our virtual cinema. If you run into any problems with our virtual cinema, you can always email me at jill@montclairfilm.org, and I can walk you through the process too.
He was interviewed yesterday, Jill. Did you see him on CBS Sunday Morning?
No, I didn't see
it. What's her name? Jane Pauley. And they did a pretty extensive interview. And, the actor who stars in this, what is it, Minari? Yeah, the guy who stars in it is a young Asian guy who most fans would know from The Walking Dead. So he was one of the stars of The Walking Dead and got this incredible role on The Walking Dead 6 months after starting in the film industry, which was also sort of unheard of. And now says this is an incredible film and also sort of aligns with his life story. So I learned that yesterday on that. So we could just, all of us can sign up?
Yeah, so if you go to montclairfilm.org, it's, we charge kind of like you would if you were going to see a movie in the theater, and you'll get an email from Eventive, which is our virtual cinema system. It's a little, there's a couple of steps to the process. It's not as easy as like logging on to Amazon, but you are supporting the local theater as well. And you get access to these independent movies that may not always be on Amazon.
It's also on the front page of Baristanet today. Minari is on.
Oh, is it?
For those of you who look at Baristanet, which is the local.
Interesting. We also did an interview with the director during the festival that I think like after you watch the movie, you can access that on YouTube as well. So you can see Tom Hall, our executive director, interviewing the director of Minari. It's a great film.
Watch it that one day?
I think it's just that one day that they're giving us access to it. But I'll double check. I'll send you a link. And I'm also going to send you links to the other films that Ken and I have been talking about as well, just in case you're interested.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Yeah,
also, they can trim all this off when they put it on YouTube. But in December, we did those 2 films that weren't documentaries as a little fill-in thing because they had some gaps in programming. The new semester, I think they said would be like April
Yeah.
kind of thing. So maybe in March, we'll do a little in-between thing that's not documentaries. I'm going to put in the chat an email that you can send me if you have any ideas about films or future sessions or topics that we might use. We're open to things. We have ideas for a couple of sessions, but we're open to other things. So if you want to send me something, any ideas that you have, maybe it's just a film, not necessarily, like a group of films, but, and we could do 3 documentaries that are not related. Just
I'm
good
sure you know
documentaries.
already that Mank was nominated for a Golden Globe, right?
6 Golden Globes.
Yeah, I know.
The
More
most
than
of
one.
any film, which I was a little surprised. I mean, I thought it would get some nominations, but I was a little surprised. And 1 snub on Mank, which was Amanda Seyfried, I think, should have been nominated for her role. But anyway, so we picked a couple of good ones. And, this is a good thing that you mentioned that, Joyce. Who got nominated from the prom?
Oh yeah, I know. I was saying to myself, I know there's somebody else that we saw, James Corden.
James Corden, who got terrible reviews when that film came out.
But
and I totally didn't understand.
James Corden got the Tony for the same role-ish, in that Broadway show. I can't think of the name of it. I just watched it about
2 Governors. 2 Governors.
What?
Something.
2 Governors.
Yeah, 2 Governors, 1 City.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? 2 Governors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that role was almost identical.
So I think the Golden Globes vindicated my opinion about James Corden in that film. But anyway, we shall see. All right. I think we're signing off, Jill.
I think we're signing. Tom, you had his hand up. Was there something you wanted to say, Tom, before we?
I shouldn't really, but I don't want to be a Debbie Downer or perhaps a Tommy Downer, but you were talking about recycling before, and the recycling is really a con. That was something that was put together by corporations in the 1970s. About 92% of recycled plastic just sits rotting in landfills or just becomes debris. They did it for 3 basic reasons. Number 1, they wanted to create the illusion that they were doing something about the pollution crisis. Number 2, they wanted to prevent people from taking real action, like in the form of maybe boycotting their products and affecting corporate products or corporate profits. So they figure we'll create the illusion that you're doing something about this. And they also, by doing that, shifted the blame from the corporations to us. It's like, okay, a call for action, but the idea is it's up to you to change things when it's really up to the corporations who are doing far more damage than we are as individuals and such. So it's unfortunate, even when you try to do something, it turns out that it's all part of the con.
Well, paper recycling does work. I know that because I know people who are involved in paper manufacturing and using paper products. So there's a degree of that. But actually, the most recyclable metal material is steel, and it's used very little. Like steel cans are much more recyclable, 100% all the time, because compared to aluminum. But that's a whole other topic. So
I know.
We'll let that go. I'll look for a recycling documentary for us to watch. Put that on the list, Ken. Okay. I'm leaving. I'm emptying the theater.
Thank you all.
Take
We'll
it
see
easy.
you soon.